Welcome back everyone. Today I'm picking up where I left off in the last video, working on a pair of liner locks. I got the bolsters made for this one. Now it's time to make the bolsters for the other one. I've also got to cut down some mammoth that I'll be putting on one of these and picking out some hand material for the other. So I'm glad you're here. Hang with me. Hopefully I can do something, show something that might help you along the way. So as you've probably seen in previous videos, there's an old piano sitting in here in my clean room. It actually is going to be moved to our old family home and make room in here. I've just been waiting for, the place to get set up for it. But while I'm sitting here, I heard music and I looked around, and apparently a mouse got up in there and he decided to play a tune. It sounded like a horror movie. My cat's not doing their job, apparently. I'm gonna have to get Gumbo out here. He's slacking. So anyway, I'm gonna go get the bolster material cut out and we'll start flattening some mammoth. Right now, I'm not too worried about getting the edges square except for the inside. So the grinder I was working on, the small wheel, I made sure I got it square because I want to cut the mammoth to square as well and get that to match. If it's at an angle, you have a gap, you'll get frustrated fooling with it. Here, I'm not too concerned right now. I'm going to grind up close to the line, but not all the way. I just want it in a ballpark. So set up here, get it finished profile, and we're gonna bring it in there and glue another piece onto it, mount it up to the liners and drill the hole. Broke a tap. Now, there's a couple ways to remove this. I'm gonna try to use some needle nose since I have a little sticking out and go back the other way with it. However, if that don't work, because this is titanium, I can soak it in ferric chloride and it may take 10 or 12 hours and I can get that out of there. But I'm almost done getting ready to mount these bolsters and test them out and do the counterbore and all that fun stuff. But I'm using a thread cutting tap, a regular thread cutting tap, because these are thin liners and I want to have good deep threads. Whereas if I'm doing frame locks, I'll use a forming tap where it pushes the threads out into the hole. A little different, and these can be finicky sometimes, but I use these because it makes a better thread holding in this thin material. I'm gonna take some needle nose pliers here, see if I can remove it. I don't really ever have good success doing this. I usually have to soak it. It'll break off or something like that. I can't even tell if it's moving it. Don't look like it is. And I don't have enough on the other side to grip it. So I'm going to take it, soak it in some ferric chloride. One of those demons. So while I'm trying to get tap out of that liner, I'm going to go ahead and work on this mammoth. But it has to be thin, way down. I basically want the top of this to be just under my bolster, because the bolster is going to come down too. But I want it to come down, and I want to leave enough even amount on each side for my contour of the bolster. But I've got to thin it way down. I'm using a 50 grit belt. It's new, and I'm going to run it slow. It's hard to hold. You will lose fingers like this. All right, it took about 2 hours, but a little over 2 hours to eat it out. And I mean, it is gone. Works great on titanium, not so much in steel. But I'm going to re-tap it now. I've got another tap in here. And actually, it's the same tap. It's a little shorter now that I just re-finished. See if I can get a thread with it. If not, I've got a couple other ones. I don't have another brand new one. I'm going to add a little tapping fluid. So far, so good. Not going to get in too big a hurry this time. That's what happened a while ago. So I'm tapping the liners because the bolsters are screwed to them. And I'll have to do the counterbores and all that on the bolsters. But that won't be an issue. All right, she is tapped through on that one more. Actually, I have 2 more holes on these bolsters, but I want to get them mounted on before I drill that 3rd hole. It's out on the ear of that bolster. It's going to be out here. All right, we'll pick back up when we get them mounted on there. We do a little profiling. All right, I'm set up in here. I'm going to go ahead and counterbore the screw holes for the button heads to go down in there. I'm going to go down in about 60 thousandths or so, and I'll be watching my DRO. And I set it up by bottoming out the cutter. There's a pilot on the end of this counterbore, and it is very tight, which what you want. And when you get it all centered up, go down, bottom out, and then I zero out my DRO. And then from there, I know to go down 60 thousandths. I'm leaving myself room to contour the outside of the bolster without getting into the screw head. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that operation right now. I got it locked, I'm gonna unlock it. And just like that, it's done. Now, as soon as I went back down in that bolster and saw the first shaving, I looked at my DRO to make sure it's still 0 at the surface, and then watch it all the way down. It's not very complicated, but that's how I do it. And it's pretty simple when you've got a counterbore. When you're using the end mill, you got to use a centering tool like I'm going to do right now to cut the pocket for the screw head, because I'm hiding the pivot. I'm not doing an exposed pivot on these. Either way is fine, I'm just not doing it here. So I've got to put a center mark in here. I'll put I'll touch it with a centering drill. Then I'll take a hard pin that's pointed and made for that and center it. Then I'll change that out, put an end mill out, cut that for the pocket. All right, I went ahead, got them, profiled to the frames, to the liners, and I've got them put together with some temporary screws without the backspacer. Now I can drill that one hole in the ear. I want to go at least into the other bolster, if not all the way through. We'll see how this goes. It's a lot of titanium there, and got to get it right. So we're going to get her going here. All right, I'm into the other bolster. I'll take them apart and drill it, finish drilling it, and then I will drill the pass-through hole and then go counterbore. All right, that come out pretty good. And it's real tight. Everything is even and square. You want it square. You want your, end points everywhere to be square with the frame or the liners, whatever you're doing here. And that way when you look at it, it don't jump out at you. Now there's other places we can get out, but we'll talk about that later. But right now it looks pretty good. Now what I'll do with these, I've got a mark, and I'll show you here on this one. I'm gonna go ahead, because I'm putting mammoth on here and I want to maintain the exterior of the mammoth, I have to flatten it down. I've got it pretty flat, and it'll probably go a little more because I want to get it as thin as I can and still be able to countersink my button head screws. But because I'm using and keeping the exterior, I need to try to get these bolsters finished down to the profile I want. So I've got marks all the way around them, and I'm gonna go over and start contouring these bolsters and get them to where they're at the finished state, because I'm not gonna want to take off anything off the exterior of this mammoth scale, because then it'll just be, kind of cream colored, white looking ivory stuff. But now when I go to do these, depending on what I use, I still hadn't made my mind up. If I go with mammoth, it'd be the same story. If something like micarta, I've got some ancient micarta, some real antique stuff that would look beautiful on here. Very butterscotch, bronzy looking stuff. Right now we're gonna take it over to the grinder, and I'll show you how I lay it out and get these contoured. right, these are looking pretty good. I've got to make some hole depth adjustments on these counterbores on 2 of these screws. These 2 back here, they're a couple thousandths too high, and I sanded into them a little bit, but that's not a problem. And so what I'm doing is I'm test fitting the mammoth, and you know, I've shaped it, and I'm looking real close. I'm going to pull my optivisor down here in a minute, but with my glasses I can see just a little bit of adjustment. Now these are going to be kind of a museum fit, so they'll have a slight bull nose there, real soft, and just a small bull nose. And I'm gonna do one at a time, you know, fit each side one at a time, and then we will do the hole drill and all that. Right now what I'm going to do is I'm very close, is I'm going to make sure I got it where I want it. I'm going to go ahead and trim excess off of here, make it proud where I can grind to it, and then make final adjustments right here. So after I trim it roughly, you can't see it now, but there's a pretty good, I don't know, 3/32 gap all the way around that I'll have left to finish up to the liner. There's a little bit of the line in there you might can see. But what I do is take it over here to this lap plate, and I make sure it's good and flat, even though I flattened it on my disc sander after I roughed it in with my platen. And I've got some 400 grit paper here because I want it to sit flat on those liners. And I can make any height adjustments I need to make, you know, thickness wise, by just running it on this lap plate. And I can take a pencil like this, run it on this lap plate to see if I'm good and flat. It's a little bit right here because I want it to sit flat. All right, that's pretty good. Then I'll take it over and test it again. All right, that looks pretty good. Put these back down where I can see. Good and flat to the liners. That's what I like to see. And I am right there where I want to be with this museum fit. So before I work on the other one, or before I drill the bores, counterbores here, I'm going to go ahead now and start cutting the other one to fit first and flatten it down to where I need it to be for the same kind of fit up on this side. All right, here comes one of the most frightening parts, for me anyway. And that's drilling through the liner, through this mammoth, with the thread size bit, and then I'll drill the pass-through, counterbore, and all that. But because this is not square material, you know, it's kind of a taper, natural material, you really need a jig to do this. And Pop sells one, I think it's made by Walter Sorrells, that would work perfect for this. You can get it level and square and all that. Otherwise, you got to use your eye. And I'll be using my eye this time. But it is frightening because you can screw up your high dollar scales. So I'm going to set it up here and do it anyway. Now, like I said, I do have butt pucker when this happens. All right, that one went okay. Scale still looks good and straight. Now notice I've got tape in here. I'm not really too worried about blowout because I'm going to counterbore it, but I don't want it to splinter. So that's why I'm putting it in here. Now here, because I've got this taper, I'm going to shim this in to where it's level on this 1, 2, 3 block. And I can see it with my eye somewhat. Yeah, this is sketchy, but we're going to do it. All right, we'll drill the pass-through hole. Now we'll thread those liners and see how she looks. All right, now I'm going to do the counterbore for the button head screw. I've got my piece of mammoth just sitting in here. I've got a block and I've got my counterbore bottomed out on the top of the scale. And I have my DRO 0. I'm going to go down about 60 thousandths. That'll give me a little under on the top of the head and pray for the best. Now I'm going to drill the detent. And I've got it set here closed. I've got it, you saw me mark it just now. And I'm going to go down here with a number 54 bit, drill through and dimple in that blade. And then I will come back and chamfer it a little bit with a 53. All right, I'll get you a close up here. I just barely touched the blade in there. Now I'll take the blade out and chamfer that hole slightly with a 53. Now I'm just going to drill through the lock bar with a 53 so it'll hold the 1/16 detent ball. And that's all she wrote. Man, I love that sound. Well, everything is working like it should. She's smooth, centered, very nice. Quite a bit of work left to do. Got to go grind the blade now. And a lot of detail. Softening, anodizing, file work, etching, you name it. But we're going to get started on this blade and get this thing wrapped up. That's her, folks. I didn't go show all the etching and anodizing, all that, and I'll have some close-ups here for you at the end here, but I think it come out real nice. I antiqued the liners so that they would be kind of like matching the mammoth here, in that there would be antique. But bolsters come out good. I really like the way they look. Kind of got that swirl on the outside. Got the gold screws. I jeweled the liners. Really looks sweet. And she's nice too. I mean, real nice. It's going to make a fine knife for the customer. I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank my patrons, and we're going to see you on the next one.